Personnel and Animal Welfare Committee to order. I believe we're going to continue item number 3, although if people want to speak to it while they're here, we'll allow people to speak to that item under public comment. I'm also going to ask that 5, 6, and 7 MOUs that have already been heard in EERC be put on consent without objection. And so if we could vote on the, if we could just vote on the consent calendar without objection, that'll be the case. And if we could begin, before we begin the agenda, I believe there are 3 law clerks who have been donating their time to the city, and I don't know if there's any problem with allowing them to come forward and speak for a minute or two about what they've been doing so we can appropriately recognize them for their good work.
Come on up, guys. Come up to the mic and introduce yourself. Give your name and what school you're from and have a seat.
Good afternoon. My name is Matthew Smith. I finished my first year of law school at University of San Francisco. Currently a law clerk with the City Attorney's Office.
Hi, my name's Earl Kirkland. I will be a third-year law student at Cornell in the fall, and I'm working in the Labor Relations section of the LA City Attorney's Office.
My name is Alyssa Barrett, and I just finished my first year at Loyola Law School, and I'm also in the Labor Relations section.
Well, great. Well, we just wanted to recognize you and thank you for your good work and your help to the city.
Thank you, Councilman.
And now if we could start with item number 1.
Item number 1 is the mayor memorandum relative to the exemption of 1 project coordinator position and 1 project assistant position for the Los Angeles Department of Transportation.
If you'd like to give us a report on this.
Certainly. Good afternoon, Robert Andalone, the Department of Transportation. With us today is Pauline Chan, who's the project lead, as well as Zaki Mustafa.
Good afternoon. I'm Pauline Chan from the Department of Transportation. I'm very excited to be here because the council and the mayor have approved the establishment of two positions for the pedestrian program in LADOT, namely the project coordinator position and project assistant position, both positions serving essentially as pedestrian coordinators for our new pedestrian program. The coordinators, we're here before you to request for the council's approval to exempt these 2 positions from civil service. We are in need of 2 people with very with a broad range of skills that will complement our small engineering team in the pedestrian program to come up with a school pedestrian safety strategic plan in which we will come up with strategies, a roadmap for how to improve pedestrian accommodations in the city, integration with the transportation system, and more importantly, to reduce pedestrian crashes in the city.
And actually, I have one question. I know that I think this is a great idea too, so I'm excited about it. I know there's a limit to how many exempt positions we can have in the city. Do we know how close we are to hitting that limit?
Yes, the limit is 150. Thank you. The limit is 150, and we're at 107.
Oh, okay. So we still have plenty of headroom in that regard. Mr. Zine, any questions?
Yeah, a couple. The seeking funding opportunities. Where are they going to seek funding opportunities since no one has any money?
Well, we're always hoping that there would be money coming from the state and the federal state Safe Routes to School program. We are, of course, anticipating the approval of a transportation bill in the Capitol, but we we certainly do have a 5% set aside each year in the Measure R local returns. In the current fiscal year, as well as the next fiscal year, we're anticipating a $1.75 million allocation in the PED set aside category for each year.
That's coming out of Measure R?
Yes.
And what's the salary for these two positions?
The the project coordinator position makes somewhere in the range of $63,000 to $78,000, and the project assistant is in the range of $48,000 to $59,000 a year.
And LAUSD has, or they had a program, Safe Routes to School. They still have that program? Don Rector used to coordinate that program, and I remember that for many years. Are we going to duplicate what they're doing, or are we going to correspond and have a similar, we're going to overlap? Because the Safe Routes to School has been a program that's been in place for many years. And if LAUSD has it, then what are we doing with it?
Well, actually, there is a school safety unit within LAUSD, but I understand it's a very, very small group of administrators. I'm thinking I actually know only 2 of them, and they serve the entire LAUSD school district beyond the city boundaries. They are very busy trying to help the hundreds of LAUSD schools principals on dealing with their traffic issues. So their function is mainly operational. They take care of day-to-day problems. But what we lack here in the city, as well as in LAUSD, is a more refined analysis of where the greatest needs are, where the crashes are occurring. So we really need to do some planning, some analysis of where the problems are, and then to come up with the solutions, whether they be engineering, education, enforcement, encouragement. You know, there's a whole long list of E's. We have to look at all these solutions and try to engage more proactively with the school district, the parents, the students, and the principals to come up with this strategic plan. So
well, the question is there currently a Safe Routes to School program? And if there are Safe Routes to School that are already being established and distributed, if that's already the case, then what is our Safe Routes to School program going to do other than what's already been established? Because if you live in this area and you're going to walk to school, there's the hazards of the vehicles that travel the roadway. There's the school crossing guard program, which we fund. And if we already have a Safe Routes to School program, which is nothing new, I'm trying to figure out how this particular pedestrian coordinator is going to do something that's already there.
I'm afraid that the initiatives that have been taken in the past are really limited to the presentation of a map that advises students that these are the best crossings to use on their way to school. But other than this map and the provision of stop signs, perhaps, to protect the crossings, there are really no other measures in this program that could further enhance their safety.
Then how do we further enhance their safety?
By providing crossing protections across the arterial streets. Many of today's, especially the new schools that are being built, are located along major arterial streets, as opposed to the traditional school within the neighborhood. So we have to, and also kids are traveling from a pretty wide boundary to get to that school. So there are a lot of hazards along the way. In many parts of the city, and especially in the valley, there is a lack of sidewalks for these school kids to walk on. So it's really beyond mapping. I think mapping was very important when this initiative was undertaken many years ago, but for a long time we have not really done anything else that is focused on how to improve that route to the school, the infrastructure that's provided, or to encourage and educate the kids and the parents to conduct themselves with smart behaviors to get there.
And I know there's many parents that are afraid to have their children walk to school, not because of the vehicular problem, but because of some of the perverts that prey on children.
Yes, and that's why we need enforcement engaged in this process. the school district board actually had approved a safe zone for kids. It's a program that was started, I think, back in 2005 or so. And recently, when I checked with the school district, because of lack of funding, they have discontinued that.
Yeah, they've discontinued a lot of important programs. So will this then work in coordination with the LAPD as far as enforcement with the traffic divisions to enhance that particular roadway?
Absolutely. That's what we hope to do.
Okay. I'd like to see if we can get periodic reports, Mr. Chair, to our Public Safety Committee on the effectiveness of this, because obviously children are very important in getting to school and other destinations. But I think this project coordinator position, because the walking is pretty simple. You put one foot in front of the other. But there's other consequences that we have to consider. And it's not only for the students, but adults. And I think if we need to get some reports on how effective this is going to be, and not just another position that doesn't really generate anything as far as safety and effectiveness. So if we could have that as a condition to report maybe biannually to Public Safety Committee exactly what they've accomplished, so we can keep tabs of what they're doing, because there are two positions and we need to justify every position. As we know, the budget is tighter and tighter, and safety is important. And you know, bicycles, we're concerned about people on bicycles, we're concerned about people on skateboards, we're concerned about people in general, whatever we can do to enhance safety. So I like the idea, but I want to make sure that we're doing something productive and not just establishing some positions and pass out some maps and say, well, thank you very much. It's got to be more substantive than that.
If I could add, one other aspect that they will be doing is more engagement with the actual stakeholders in the community, both the community groups as well as the school, to ensure that there's publicity about the safe routes, about the listening to the crossing guard, and more engagement with the actual public, so we can be able to better identify those issues quickly and be able to come back with more concrete solutions as opposed to just passing out the maps.
Yeah, because it's definitely an issue where we have more pedestrians being killed annually, and it's obviously a thing that when an officer writes a pedestrian a ticket, why don't they go out and catch a speeder or a drunk driver? But there is that enforcement, and then there's the education, and then there's the engineering that starts. So I'd like to see some report back that we establish some protocol so we can keep, and if we need to modify it, then we can modify it. But it is the exempt position. I just want to make sure we're justifying and we're getting some results back.
If we can come back and report to you on the effectiveness of the program.
So if you want this committee or Public Safety Committee, whatever.
What I'd suggest, I'm not sure if once we've approved the position, how relevant we are, but I think we should probably ask for a report back to both Public Safety and Transportation on the effectiveness. And obviously, if the position wasn't effective, then it would become relevant to us. But
exactly.
I suspect that won't be the case.
So we can, let's say 6 months in, do a report back to the Transportation Public Safety.
Certainly, we can do that.
Councilmember Zaki Mustafa with DOT. One of our objectives is to be creative. You know, I see us throughout the nation, other cities are always being innovative, coming up with new things, new devices for pedestrian safety. We're not like that. I want us to be like that, and I want to use this position to bring in those new innovative tools that are available throughout the nation.
There are places that I visited where, as you cross the street, they've got a colorful flag.
Right.
And you pick that flag up and you walk across the street with it, and you get to the other side, you put it back in the holder. People don't seem to steal those in some of those communities, and it seems to enhance the the visibility when you're crossing the road. It seems pretty simple.
Right.
And we know what crosswalks means that you are just in between lines when they run you over.
Right.
So
there's quite a few innovative
I mean, the crosswalk idea doesn't really work much anymore.
Right, right.
And people say, okay, you legally got hit, but the fact is you may have a nice lawsuit, but it doesn't help heal the bones.
Right.
But you talk innovation, we really haven't done much. I know some of it, like in Glendale, they've got those smart crosswalks where the lights flash.
In-payment flashers, yes.
So there's other technology that we have really been behind the curve. And as we have more pedestrian fatalities and serious injuries.
Well, you got over 300 pedestrian accidents per year in the city and over 82 fatalities for the last 5 years. We have to do something.
No, I agree with you. I just want to make sure that we're doing something productive.
We will be.
And not just spinning our wheels.
I should also mention that The council has approved the use of $1.26 million in Measure R money in the fiscal year 2010 to 11 for this citywide Safe Routes to School assessment study. And it is from this fund that we are proposing to hire these two coordinators.
Now, these two folks are going to do it themselves, or are they going to then branch out and bring other people in?
Well, we will have to branch out. We have a small team of engineers that will be working with coordinators to come up with these proposals, reports for the top ranked 100 schools in the city with the worst crash records.
Okay, good. Okay. All right, sounds good to me.
So if we could approve this item with the request for report backs in 6 months without objection.
Thank you.
And if we could move to item number 2.
Item number 2 is the city attorney report and ordinance relative to the amendment of the Los Angeles Administrative Code in order to make numerous technical changes and one nominal benefit modification to the provisions governing the Los Angeles City Employees Retirement System, and also to make technical changes to the provisions governing the limited term retirement plan.
Alan Manning, Assistant City Attorney. 99.9% of this ordinance consists of technical changes. There is one benefit change, and that is that the period of time for applying for a disability is being lengthened by 6 months, from 6 months to 1 year, which will have a negative financial impact.
Lita Payne from Lacers. Yeah, these are primarily technical changes to our administrative code. About a third of them are clarifications of plan language, where we had sought interpretation from the city attorney's office and set up our practices as such. And now we want to go back and make sure the administrative code reflects those practices that have been established. Other changes in here are title changes, definition changes, removal of obsolete language, those types of things. We're prepared to answer any questions you have.
So the most significant change recommended by the Joint Labor Management Benefit Committee was changing the disability period from 6 months to a year.
The application period, yes.
Right. And that isn't expected to be anything more than a negligible cost.
Right. The actuary did a report and found it to be de minimis.
De minimis. We never hear that anymore.
That's
we always hear
actuarial term. Yeah.
De minimis. I like that.
I know there's a somewhat unusual council voting requirement for this one. I wonder if someone could explain that.
Well, any benefit changes require a 2/3 council vote to approve, and the measure needs to be passed twice. That is in the charter. It's required for all changes relative to the pension plans.
And my understanding is also there are requirements relating to notice of the actuarial report as well. It has to be noticed for at least, I don't know, 2 or 3 weeks, something like that.
Right. It's 2 weeks, and this the report itself is very, very short. But yes, it does need to be noticed, so there can be public comment. It will not be necessary, however, to have the actuary present.
But so we have to flag that for the city clerk's office to be sure this doesn't come up earlier than 2 weeks after our approval here in committee, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Mr. Zine?
I just got a question on this retirement issue, disability from 6 months to 1 year. Can you go into some detail on that?
You want to go ahead, Mark?
Yeah, hi, I'm Mark from Lacers, and this is a result of the Joint Labor Management Committee meeting in which there was a special task force which looked at what we called the three-legged stool of disability handling in the city, one being workers' comp, one being the standard insurance or the insurance provided for the active employees, and then the disability retirement, and looking at how those work together. And the result was that for the standard insurance policy, the basic insurance which we have for the city, the employees have a period of approximately 1 year in which they receive benefits at a rate of 50%. That's if you don't have the supplemental. So what ended up happening was that we had a historical problem in which rarely a person would want to hold on to that 50% of pay because the disability retirement itself was only 33% of pay. The disability retirement, as it is in the plan today without this change, was 6 months application. So you can see where they ran into each other. There would be about a 6-month gap between the time in which they would exhaust the 50% benefits that they would receive from the insurance and then want to go into the disability application process. This created problems where people would wait until the year was up, exhaust the 50%, and then they would apply for disability, but some would miss the application date because of that situation. Very few cases of that, because we're very proactive about making sure people knew about this problem as it came up in all three areas, being personnel, lacers, and of course the workers' comp division within the personnel department. So the committee had looked at this issue at that time and recognized that this was a bit of a problem, and so they had recommended that as a suggested change to make it 1 year and make the three systems sort of become more compatible. As you're also probably aware, is with the state rate disability, historically, long ago and far away, there was a period in time in which the temporary disability, which was at a rate of approximately 90% or full pay, went for a period of 291 days, again approximating about a year of pay. And that was in the old system. Personnel changed that a few years back with the workers' comp, the revisions to the workers' comp code, labor code, as a result of action at the state level. However, this issue of the standard insurance and the disability was still recognized as an issue. So we presented to you as a item that came from that process, and that they had recommended would make things work more evenly and be less of a problem for people who might get caught in that.
Because anytime we talk about pensions, it starts to get people's attention.
Yes.
As you know. So this isn't going to, it's not going to impact in a major degree for an enhancement, just make it
exactly.
System.
What you're really talking about is the person who may not recognize that they should have applied within that 6-month period. We go out of our way, as does the three systems. We try to make sure people understand you need to apply within the 6 months of the termination of your service, and that's what we're talking about here. There are very few cases. In fact, I can't really even come up with any right now, but because they had recommended this, we brought it forward. It is a situation in which I think what you're really talking about is how many people would have not applied and walked away, and we don't really know exactly how many there would be, and I think that's the result you see in the actuarial report, that it's de minimis, because the expectation is that most of the people would have applied within the 6 months anyways.
Okay. Thank you for the explanation.
You're welcome.
Okay, Mr. Chair.
So,
good for me.
Why don't we move this item and ask that the actuarial report be available to the public for at least 2 weeks before it's approved by council, and otherwise this item will be approved without objection. Item number 4.
Item number 4 is the Department of Animal Services, reports from the Department of Animal Services in response to the motion from Councilmember Labange and Englander, directing the department to report on its wildlife management program, including staffing and personnel changes.
Good afternoon. I'm Brenda Barnett, General Manager, Los Angeles Animal Services, and I have with me Mark Salazar, who's going to actually give the report for us.
Good afternoon, council members. I am the Director of Field Operations, and earlier this year we took a little closer look at some of our folks working in our special operations, wondering why. One of the questions was, why are they so successful, and how are they doing this, and how are we supporting them, and ensuring that the future will give us the same type of support, if not even maybe some better support in areas that maybe we lack, and make sure that the programs are stable. One of the groups that we looked at was our wildlife program, and this is a report back with information on that. We essentially have had one consistency in our wildlife program, and that has been Officer Greg Randall, He is an animal control officer. He has served in the wildlife capacity upwards of 10 years and has received a lot of good recognition for the work he's done. He has had at times either another animal control officer or a supervisor that's helped bend support for him, but he has basically carried the program himself. With that, we did a little bit of statistics over the last 5 years. We discovered that as far back as 2007, he had 1,521 different wildlife-related activities that he personally handled. In 2011, it's slowly had a decline, but over the 5 years, it's reduced all the way down to about 691. And what we began to find was that he was getting involved in a lot more of paperwork process, a lot of phones, a lot of emails. He was becoming a little bit more bogged down. I also think that a lot of the credit is just to our field staff out there. The different districts were very responsive in handling different wildlife types of concerns that were called into them as well. Overall, all the different types of things that he put his hand on, whether it was an email or a phone contact, he kept record of all of this type of data. And over that 5 years, it was about 12,000 different types of actions that he has taken in one form or another himself. Last year, his actions that he actually was able to get to was about 774. And with that decline, we wanted to find out how do we support Greg and how do we keep the program as successful as possible. With this, what we looked at doing was bringing all of our special operation folks together and helping them to cross-train and then become supportive of each other. In fact, Greg had said to me one day he's even afraid to turn off of his cell phone and just go take a vacation because he's that dedicated, but he doesn't want to let anybody down, but he needs to be able to also have a break and know that he's got support that will be there. So we, at the end of February, brought under an acting lieutenant to oversee our special operations. We brought our wildlife program together with our permits program, along with, we're accompanied with our animal cruelty task force program, and also our, I'm forgetting one of them.
Smart.
Oh, of course.
How could you forget that?
Of course. One of, we brought our SMART program, which was our small animal rescue program, together at the same time with our DART program, our Department Air Rescue Team. And actually, SMART and DART, we merged together at the same time and unified them to become now what we call SMART, but it's our Specialized Mobile Animal Rescue Team. So they handle both small and large animals. One of the reasons that we did that was because we wanted to have a pool of people that we could call anytime 24/7 that could go out and respond to a rescue. And each of these teams had 5 or 6 people. Now we have a group of about 12 people that we can actually call at any hour and respond out to animals in distress. This was actually, we received a lot of good media coverage, if I can go out there for a second, at Hanson Dam just within the last couple of weeks, airlifting a horse that got stuck in quicksand, actually, and it was a very successful operation by the new SMART team. But equally so, back to a good report with our wildlife, we wanted to provide him better equipment. We wanted to provide him more resources with personnel. We've already got him more gear, such as newer cameras to record his reports with, made him more available for community meetings and special patrols. And he had just a recent success this last weekend, which was we had a raccoon, a mother, and actually more of a juvenile that was with her that fell into a 10-foot kind of a pylon, and she fell in there, and by the time we got the call, she was already deceased. We didn't know this until we were actually able to get the baby out. But the success in that was Officer Randall normally has gone out and handled those types of calls himself because it was wildlife. And so he was able to team up with the SMART team and the equipment that they have and successfully rescued the juvenile this last weekend. And actually, it's made some Facebook some real nice. It's gotten some real nice recognition on Facebook, and I understand Officer Randall was at his at a dentist appointment, and his dentist didn't even realize what he was out there doing and had seen the Facebook picture, and he was the talk of the office there. So he was very proud of that recognition. So this is what we're looking to do, is just to, in the future, be able to just continue to support the services. We're already beginning to groom another officer to come alongside Officer Randall to, so that the inventor of the ice cube, if you will, doesn't kind of, nobody else knows the recipe to that ice cube. Other people are there that understand how to do wildlife rescues and support the community with wildlife concerns. And then to be able to just provide the best service we can here in Los Angeles. And if I can also note, one of the things that we discovered in a lot of these special units is there's such a passionate dedication, like Greg, for the program that they're in, but they don't necessarily get all that much recognition for the work that they do. It's one of the things that we'd like to look at more opportunities for, that as we see these folks doing what they do every day, that we can provide them better and better recognition, so they even feel better, going home every day for the work that they've done. It's a great job, and it's a great team, and we're real excited about the year ahead.
Well, I'm glad to hear that you've made a lot of progress in this arena. I've worked with Greg a little bit where we've had problems in the hills with coyotes, particularly, where he's come out and done community meetings and tried to help train residents on how to live with coyotes in your midst, and he's been very helpful in that regard. But I agree, it's been sort of a one-man show, somewhat overwhelmed, and everything depends on him to do everything. So I know he's sort of had an office and a storage closet. I understand we're trying to get him a real office. So
he has a real office
he
now.
Does.
He has it now, and he's so
And
humble.
has room to meet with people and all that, so that's a good thing. And hopefully you hire a second officer soon that can help split up the work a little bit, so it's not so overwhelming and so focused on just one person. I think this is real progress in this area, so I commend you for it.
We appreciate that. Yeah, he's actually made a recommendation for the staff to help support him too, so we think it will be a very harmonious team working together on wildlife going forward.
That's great. Mr. Zine, any questions or comments?
I totally support him, and I dealt with him and some of his challenges. But what I find interesting is this wildlife statistical recap of 5 years, January 2007 to December 2011, 203 bobcats, 209 coyotes, 91 mountain lions, 1 mouse, 348 possum, 1 pigeon, 139 raccoons, 290 skunks, and 326 unknowns. So 5,035 total, and it gives a recap. Everything's from an alligator. I guess that's the one that down in the harbor.
Correct.
What was that? The alligator down. Reggie.
That's right.
So Reggie was the alligator, but it's interesting. Bats, bears, birds. I mean, some of these things are just amazing. But there was some. In fact, I saw a dead possum this morning as I was driving on the road. So.
Well, I'll tell you, one of the things that got me thinking about it is I saw Greg walking down the hallway one day, and he kind of had a trash bag covering over him and a little peephole through it, and I asked him, "What are you doing?" He says, "I'm doing a little surveillance trying to catch a skunk." And I said, we have some other teams with more resources and tools that might be able to help you. And that actually kind of started the wheel spinning of how do we support each other better.
Puts himself in a plastic bag.
So he's dedicated.
And then he'll suffocate himself, and then it'll be over. But no, it's interesting, all the different reports. And I didn't know that we had, well, I know rattlesnakes, but then we have unknown snakes, ground squirrel, tree squirrel, and unknown squirrel.
Mm-hmm.
So he definitely has challenges. So no, it's good, because I know he's struggled for a long time trying to, shall we say, professionalize what he's been doing in that wildlife, because people don't look at Los Angeles as a wildlife area.
He is a statistician extraordinaire, and there are people nationally that have looked at the way that he's kept records, and he's been very helpful cross country. And that's the type of, we want to get a little bit, show them the West Coast. LA's on the map here, and we're doing some great things. And we think this is another vehicle to help demonstrate and help other agencies.
He's
So
very, very dedicated, so we want to acknowledge that the department's supporting what he's trying to do because when those people complain about these issues, they're all legit complaints and they have to be followed up.
Well, people think of us as an asphalt and concrete jungle in Los Angeles, but they don't realize how much wildlife activity we actually have, especially because we've done as much preservation as we have in the hillsides.
We have, yes. Very
So,
good idea.
If there's no other comments, we'll note and file this report without objection. And I have no public comment cards, but if there was anyone here to speak on item number 3 and wish to fill out a card, going once, going twice. No other business on the agenda, so we are adjourned.